Now, parts of this World War II bomber were brought thousands of miles from Alaska to a hangar in Brighton.
Roger Weber shows us the work being done to it, but also the dream that led to it.
Call it a mission, or maybe an obsession. Patrick Mahalik and his team are restoring a World War II bomber.
It will fly.
You're sure of this?
It will fly.
It's a B-25 Mitchell, the same kind of plane Jimmy Doolittle's boys flew in a daring raid on Tokyo.
There was over 9,000 of these airplanes built, and there's only about 50 of them left in the world today.
From auctions to eBay to the Alaskan wilderness, Patrick is collecting pieces to assemble into one plane. The inspiration came to him as a boy, living next to an airfield in Brighton.
From the time I was probably 8 years old, I was building airplanes via Legos or plastic models or balsa wood models with my grandfather. But I always had this particular love for a B-25 Mitchell bomber.
Patrick went away to college to get a degree in aviation maintenance technology. While his friends were out partying, Patrick stayed in his dorm room, studying old records, looking for a B-25.
He discovered that a B-25, repurposed to fight forest fires, had crashed near Fairbanks, Alaska in 1969. Satellite images showed something was there. Todd Traynor asked one of the locals to visit the site.
Patrick and I practically fell off our chairs when we first saw the pictures.
The plane's middle section, the key piece Patrick needed, had survived. To bring it home, he recruited volunteers and raised money through Kickstarter.
The first time seeing Sandbar Mitchell was, it was kind of like that dream I had when I was a kid. Here it is, this is reality.
It was nicknamed the Sandbar Mitchell because of the original crash site, but 44 years later,
we couldn't see the whole thing at once because trees were growing up literally right around it and through the middle of it.
They cleared the trees, swatted mosquitoes, and carried guns in case moose or bear crashed the party. They did not. Patrick was directly below a huge helicopter, which lifted 3,000 pounds out of the Alaskan wilderness.
The wind just kind of swirled in there, so it was like being in a tornado. It was nerve-wracking.
The chopper delivered the wreckage to a flatbed truck, which hauled it 7,000 miles to a hangar in Brighton.
Any project, especially one this large, it takes time, and it's not something that's self-gratifying right away. All said and done, probably 90% of the airplane will be original parts.
Patrick is especially proud that the restoration relies on high school students, like 17-year-old Logan Kacharik.
It's determination and patience. Not a lot of this airplane you see going together at a very fast pace, but all of a sudden the pieces fall together.
It may take 10 years before the Sandbar Mitchell is airborne again. Logan dreams of being in the cockpit.
It's something that, it gets my heart pounding right now. I can't even, I can't describe the thing of how this is going to turn out in the end, I'm sure it's going to be an eye-watering, amazing grace, flags flying kind of deal.
For now, a flag with 48 stars is on the hangar wall. An Army Air Corps tattoo is on Patrick's arm.
This airplane is more than just an airplane. It honors, the greatest generation who fought for me to be able to be here and do this.
Making a boyhood dream come true. In Brighton, I'm Roger Weber, Local 4.
Thousands of people in several cities hit the streets tonight to protest the death of Freddie Gray, who died of spinal injuries after his arrest in Baltimore. Protests in New York got heated and ended in more than a dozen arrests. In Baltimore, protests were mostly peaceful. Jailed protesters from Monday night have been released, and tonight some protesters are once again ignoring the curfew. Our Devin Scullion joins us now. He's live in Baltimore. What is the mood like there tonight, Devin?
Well, still rather tense, I think you'd have to say, Carmen, although on the strength of last night's first night of the curfew, which got off to a little bumpy start, just as tonight's did. For the most part, things seem moving rather smoothly. We're one of the other many, as you move around town, many police-manned road closures where they're not only trying to keep the peace, but yes, also enforce this curfew. But I think the big story tonight were indeed the thousands of people who took to the streets downtown. It was supposed to be really a student protest in support of Freddie Gray and in opposition to police violence, but it turned out to be a lot more than students that hit the streets.
We will fight for Freddie!
It was an enormous march through downtown Baltimore, growing as it moved along. It was a rainbow of faces, ages, and backgrounds. Clyde Johnson is the Assistant Dean of Diversity at the Maryland Institute College of Art. He told me he was in the march to support his students who were marching, but it turned out he had deeper reasons of his own. What's it felt like for you as a black man in Baltimore the last couple of days?
It is not just the last couple of days. Okay?
Bad question.
It is not the last couple of days. This has been my life. Almost 50 years old.
It came after another day of soul searching in Baltimore. The smell of smoke still hangs in the air around the wreckage of Monday night. Baltimore tries to heal while other cities must wonder.
I grew up in and around Detroit, and this could easily be Detroit. So it could be easily, I've spent some time in St. Louis. This can easily be St. Louis, easily be Gary, it was LA in '92. So this is increasingly an American story, an American urban story.
Dr. Lester Spence is an associate professor of political science at Johns Hopkins University, but he grew up and still spends a lot of time in Detroit. The parallels are hard to miss, not just for these two cities, but for much of big city America.
If you look at every single social economic indicator, they're on the bottom with somebody's foot on their neck.
The issue is the issue with the police, but I'm saying, along with life issues, okay, along with health issues in the community, people are going to act up.
And as we come back here live, you see still more of this. It's still so jarring to see this law enforcement presence that looks so, well, for lack of a better word, militaristic. You know, I ran into the Maryland Lieutenant Governor today, Boyd Rutherford, as we were looking through some of the wreckage. We were at the senior center that had burned down, and I asked him, I said, has there been any Monday morning quarterbacking, any second thoughts about the response to all of this on Monday night? And he said, no doubt there will be a lot of lessons learned eventually when they can sit down and look at it all, but for right now, they're still in the middle of it. From Baltimore, Devin Skillion, Local 4. Carmen and Steve, back to you.
All right, thank you, Devin. And for now, at least, the curfew appears to be working. Our Devin Skillion reporting for us live.
Side look.
There's something going on that's putting your friends and family at risk.
There's not a community in southeast Michigan that hasn't been hit hard.
Heroin. It's in the city, the suburbs, our children's school, and easy to buy on neighborhood streets.
When you think of a drug addict or an alcoholic, the first thing that pops in your mind is not someone that looks like this.
We've reported on unsuspecting teens who've turned into heroin addicts, as was the case of David Clayton from Macomb County.
Some people always think that the drugs are somewhere else. They're in a different community. They're not in our community. And in my task force, you know, specifically, we focus mostly on Oakland County.
Meet Sergeant Jim Niddle.
We approach the house. We're going to come in from the east side.
He is a local police officer working on a federal DEA task force.
We'll go up, hit the door.
And it's many times because of local suburban connections, federal agents can succeed busting heroin traffickers.
We had the largest heroin seizure in the state, recorded in the state of Michigan, and it was a seizure in Pontiac, and it was 70 kilograms of heroin, 10 kilograms of cocaine, and about $700,000 cash. Right in the kind of in the middle of Oakland County.
DEA has always operated with a task force environment where we bring in state and local law enforcement officers and we federally deputize them so they have federal arrest powers. And really what that does is that really expands our reach. That it's a force multiplier. All of us, it gives us that much more manpower to work with, investigators to work with.
Some question whether their community officers should be involved with a heroin task force. Sergeant Niddle has a strong response.
It's a tough concept sometimes for citizens to understand, but these officers go into these task force. They're taking off drugs and money and drug dealers that live and operate in our communities. And then we turn around and these officers come back to the departments. They work their assignment. They come back to the departments. They have the training of the federal government.
Heroin addiction has no boundaries. As we've seen, it frequently starts with prescription drug abuse, then turns to heroin because it's so much cheaper.
There are teenage addiction problems throughout wealthy communities and in the city, and you've got moms and dads in their 40s that have addiction problems.
Larry, you'll have the
cramp.
All the more reason, the DEA says, to use local officers to help battle the growing heroin overdose and death cases Metro Detroit is seeing. In the cases where drugs and money are seized that the suburban officers are working on, portions of those proceeds actually go back to the community. I'm Karen Drew, Local 4 Defenders.
Tonight we continue with What Would Your Kid Do? We had an undercover producer try to get inside a home while the parents were away.
Yeah, and if you were with us last night, you saw what happened when we tried the same experiment. But this time around, we changed our stranger to see if the kid's reaction would also change. Again, it's also really important to point out we did all of this with the parents' consent, and our van was stationed right down the street.
Our cameras and microphones are in place. Our parents, Nina and JD, tell their kids they're headed to the mall, when in fact their destination is our undercover van. Our stranger, who's an undercover producer, is ready to go. She looks remarkably different than Mike. If you remember, he posed as our stranger last time around.
Kayla, come here.
Kayla is the oldest of 3 kids. Caden is her younger sister. She's 10. And then there's Jalen. He's 6. The kids are home alone, and as you can see, they're just hanging out on the sofa watching TV with no idea what's about to happen.
I don't think they're going to answer the door.
Why not?
Because I always tell them don't answer the door for strangers.
We tell them all the time not to answer the door, but depending on who comes to the door and their comfort level, I think they might answer.
As our undercover producer, posing as an interior decorator, moves into position, Mom and Dad start to get nervous.
All right, here's the toss.
Here we go.
This is a good time to mention our mom in this scenario also happens to be a middle school principal. Watch as our producer makes her way to the door and starts to knock. The kids' first reaction is to find their oldest sister, Kayla. She happened to be upstairs. And as the knocking continues and seems to get louder, the 2 youngest kids start to hide behind the couch.
All right, so nothing yet. Let's see.
Caden's calling me.
So that's your youngest calling you?
That's my middle.
Oh, your middle.
She's actually the more motherly, protective one.
Okay, so she's calling you, probably asking what she should do.
Right.
But our producer isn't giving up. The younger kids continue to call for their sister, who's still upstairs.
Kayla, someone's at the door. Can you get it?
Hello? Are you trying to talk to me?
And now you can hear it in their voices. Nervousness turns into fear.
Someone's at the door and I don't know who it is. Hang on. Hurry, I'm scared. I'm scared.
What's your best guess as to what's going on?
Michaela probably telling her, don't answer the door, come up here.
Nina, it's Megan. I was here to take the pictures today.
Michaela's too firm. She's not going to answer the door. If she is, it's only because she's annoyed by her keep knocking. But she's going to stand firm. She's the type that she going to protect.
Hi.
She opened the door.
Your mom's Nina, right? I'm here. I have some color swatches. I know you guys were doing some work to the house. I was supposed to take some pictures and kind of look at some colors for some of your rooms.
Our parents, they just left.
So now with the door wide open, the kids tell our stranger they're home alone.
What do you think when you see their door wide open like that?
I think it's because she kept knocking.
But they still need to know not to let anyone in.
And Kaden messed up because she yelled like, Michaela. She shouldn't have did that.
How hard is that to see your front door wide open like that?
Right. She's in. She's calling me, but.
And if that were a predator,
they're in.
She's in.
Yeah, she's in.
Not only did the kids open the door for our undercover producer, they let her inside and even watched as she walked around snapping pictures of the inside of their home. Remember, she's posing as an interior decorator.
It's eye-opening.
It's time now to let the kids in on this test, and they were emotional.
Well, she sounded like she was professional, so yeah, I opened the door and...
Because you trusted that it was someone. I'm hoping they learn from this experience. I'm hoping that the episode of having them scared and nervous is worthwhile, just so that they understand how serious it is and that they can't open the door no matter what.